same time that Buddy Dog started and the League of Women Voters started, and it was like things were bursting new in Sudbury at that time. We, as a historical society, underwent a long-term strategic planning session towards the end of last winter. So when we embarked upon this season, we had a mission statement, and we knew who we were serving and what we hoped to do. So we have done a lot this year. For those of you who haven't been in the loop of information or checked our webpage, which is also new this year, our mission is to make the interesting history of Sudbury Plantation important and involved in the lives of people of Sudbury today. And you'll notice it says Sudbury Plantation, because in the beginning, parts of Wayland and parts of Maynard were Sudbury. And we look back to those times. We have been making active bringing back of memories all this year in programs. And I think a lot of you people here have been present at some of those programs where people recalled Sudbury as it was in the past. And that, of course, is the memorable past, which is what we can do for our meetings generally. We also do the old colonial things, and one of the things we decided in our strategic planning was we really want to pass on to young people the history and importance of Sudbury's history. So we have begun to establish relationship with the schools, and it's so exciting. This year, 2 third-grade classes did tours, the Israel Loring tour, which included much of Sudbury Center. And that was the groundwork for more tours and involvement with the third grades. So we're beginning to bridge the generation gap. Now, a lot of people have done a lot, and I want to say thank you to the town of Sudbury for its support. You know, we're not a town organization. We don't get town money. We don't have town rules. We just cooperate, and we do a lot of cooperation, and the town does a lot of cooperation with us, and we appreciate that. And we also have strengthened our connections with the Historical Commission, which most of you know because it manages Hosmer House and the relics and pictures and writings relating to Ms. Hosmer. And we've established much more cooperation with them than we've had in the past. It's been a time of growth and a time of challenge. We are always challenged to archive, record, properly care for the many things that people donate to the society. And those of you who've had to archive a wedding dress know that to have it cleaned and put in the right kind of box with the right kind of paper, there's all kinds of things if you want something to last and last and last. And we've spent a lot of money on buying things. Lee Swanson has guided us so that we get the right things. And we're going to care for things in the future as best we can. And we need lots of volunteers always to help us get these things cleaned and repaired. And we catalog them, which we call accessioning. And it all takes a lot of time. So we appreciate it when people come in during the week and say, is there something I can do to help? And there's a certain set of people that come in almost every week, or at least a couple times a month. and we appreciate that a great deal. It's very, very important. So anybody who's here or out in the community, if you want to do something that's interesting, that you've never done before, don't hesitate to drop in. You might find it tedious, who knows, but you should give it a try, because there's so many things to be done that there's something for everyone. Now, the people you see most visibly, some of them are here today. We always have fantastic refreshments, and if some of the refreshment people could stand, I know that there's Mary Vivaldi, Jackie Bausk, Ursula Lyons, and Ellie Berry, and lots of other people contribute regularly for our refreshments. And then there's people who sit at the for sale table. Right now, you'll see back there Debbie Keeney. She's our treasurer, helps us keep our finances straight, and we are in very good financial order. She made up a nice report to give to you all, and I forgot to bring it down. So I'll try to get it later. But she's a very thorough, careful bookkeeper, and we have good records of our finances. And we do appreciate it when people make donations, because we need them, or when they buy things, because that supports us too. So then we usually have people out on the membership. Frequently, Ellie Berry's welcoming you. We used to always have Ginny Menpa out there, and we miss her greatly. There's a lot of jobs to be done here, and people enjoy being a part of this. So we want to thank you all for that. Now we have a little bit of business to do. Our board people are elected for 2 years, and half of them get replaced every year. And then from what we have as our new board, and then we elect our officers. And so first I'll tell you who is still staying on the board. Me, Debbie Keeney. Debbie's in the back. Could you stand up if you're here? Terry Keeney. Terry was here earlier. He's back in front of Debbie. Stand up, Terry. And Debbie. Okay. Ellie Berry, she's usually here, but not. Nancy Summers, would you stand up, Nancy? Ruth Fields, she's usually here, but she's got a granddaughter getting married soon. And Tony House. Okay, thank you. Now, people who have a term that expired this year are Joe Bausk. Joe, would you stand up? Where are you? Ursula Lyons, Alice Byington, Jackie Bausk, Mary Vivaldi, David Pendleton, and Ginny Menpa's term would have expired. So most of the outgoing trustees did feel that they would like to stay on again. So we appreciate that very much. And sometimes, and I think we'll see some of that this year, somebody who's been a trustee says, I don't care for these board meetings, but I'll come in and I'll do my little part, whether it's writing this or doing that. So people make great contributions who aren't on the board sometimes. So we have nominees for the new 2-year term. And if you're here, please stand up. Joe Bausk, another 2 years. Ursula Lyons. Ursula's taking notes, so we won't ask you to stand up. Jackie Bausk, Mary Vivaldi, and 2 new people, Joan Meenan and Esther Mann. And so we're so pleased to have these.
Heard from it.
Now, if we will have such a motion, we will ask the secretary to cast 1 vote in favor of those people. Do we have such a motion? I think Joe. Joe is actually the nominating chair, and in some meetings, the nominating person chairs the whole meeting. I should have had you do this, Joe. Good. I'm glad you don't mind. So Joe moves that we elect that slate of new board members. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The unanimous vote is for that slate. And now then we have nominations for officers. Officers are only elected for 1 year because it's too hard to keep track of whether you're a 1-year person or a 2-year person. So it's just a clean slate every year for officers. So nominations for officers are myself, Margaret Fredrickson, for president, Joe Bausk for vice president, Debbie Keeney for treasurer, and Ursula Lyons for secretary. Do we have a motion to elect that slate of officers? Terry Keeney makes that move. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Okay, it is unanimously passed. So that is the end of our business meeting. So we now progress to the really interesting thing of the day. And I think some of you recognized the people who came in, and you know the topic is the Buddy Dog Society. And I think you recognize Ed Kreitzik, one of the shakers and movers of Sudbury. If you were here 50 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, you know Ed. And you understand Kreitzik. And also Ellen Crone, who you'll see frequently at the Senior Center and at the Buddy Dog Society and other places around town, too. And they have the information. And Lee Swanson got pictures and put it all together. So now we will hear all about it. Lee?
Thank you. Thank you, Peggy. This is a story of, well, it has lots of sidebars, and it all starts with finding a dog in the dump.
Yes, we go back to 1958, late 58, early 59. At that time, we did not document by photograph or other ways the events happening. We didn't know they were going to be historically significant. But in 1958, the town of Sudbury had, at that time, unlike today where we have a transfer station, which of course was a successor to the sanitary landfill, which of course was a successor to the dump, which was a successor to the open-faced burning dump. At that time, we had an open-faced burning dump. The town refuse was dumped by trucks, and a small front-end loader bulldozer would push those into a slope, and then it was ignited to try to burn the easy disposable burnable stuff. The operator of the front-end loader, Alton Clark, longtime resident of town, very active in town affairs, noticed one of the paper bags in the face of this open-faced burning dump moving as he was going back and forth with his front-end loader. He jumped out, went to the bag, and in it found a little puppy. The edge of the bag had become singed, and the little puppy's whiskers and hair around his ears had burned. And Alton Clark called Al. Al said, "We can't let this take place," and he picked up the puppy and took it to the town animal control officer, at that time, dog officer, Harry Rice. Harry Rice was the dog officer. And there was some publicity about the disgraceful event of someone deciding to dispose of a puppy that way by putting it on the face of the burning, open-faced dump. And the publicity got to the attention of some of the residents of the town, who went to Harry Rice and said, "This is terrible." And he said, "It happens frequently. People are very careless about how they dispose. And as these people were talking to Harry Rice, they said, "What are you doing with the other dogs you have as dog officer?" And at that time, there were about 8 of them romping around in the open field, which was where he contained the dogs. And he said, after 10 days being retained by the dog officer, if they are not retrieved by their owner or adopted by someone else who pays a new licensing fee, the state law requires, under the surrender law, that these dogs be given up to merchants who come by with vans and pick up these animals and take them to various medical experimental laboratory use, some of them being used for one instance only for surgery practice. Well, those who heard this story, of course, were horrified at the prospect of these dogs that were gambling around in the field. And among those that were there at the time was Alfred Halper, a developer builder in the town. We in Sudbury know of Halper Homes. Well, Halper Homes, of course, Al Halper built them. And there was Ernst Lucas and his wife Hannah, and Harry Rice, of course. And they said, we can't allow that to happen. What can we do, Harry? And he said, if these dogs aren't adopted, they're going to be picked up within the next 4 or 5 days. And spontaneously, but not very thoughtfully about the consequences, this group of people said, well, then we'll adopt them. We'll adopt them. He said, well, all right, pay the $3 licensing fee, and they are yours. Then they looked at each other and said, well, what are we going to do with them? And said to Harry, all right, you have another field over here. Will you board them for us on a commercial basis? You're the dog officer over here. The dogs can jump back and forth over the fence. Whoop, did I do something bad? But Harry agreed to board the dogs, and that was the very, very first incident of the activists in the formation of the Buddy Dog Humane Society finding a place to take care of our dogs. Then some were taken to individuals' homes, others were taken, left in Harry's control, and we began to find adoptive homes for them. After a period of doing this, relatively short period of doing this, the cold weather was coming, and an event that is a little unusual. The town of Sudbury had a small building about 10 by 10 feet on the land that is now the Heritage Park next to Hosmer House. That was the town of Sudbury Central Post Office. It was about 10 by 10 feet. And it was no longer needed because a new post office was building near South Sudbury, and it was donated to the Buddy Dog Humane Society. With a little persuasion and influence, we got it donated to the Buddy Dog Humane Society, to the animal care. It was no longer, but not yet Buddy Dog. That little 10 by 10 building was slid up onto the slides on a flatbed truck that was used for retrieving damaged cars and carried down to Harry Rice's land, and that became the first Buddy Dog Humane Society doghouse, the ex-town of Sudbury Central Post Office. And we may have some illustration of what that looked like. Do we have anything on that, Lee?
We just showed 2 pictures of the.
Oh, you did.
And we are also showing 2 pictures of the interior components of the post office, which were kindly given to us by the U.S. Post Office.
Well, I won't cue you. You cue me then. Okay.
No, that's all right.
Very good. Now, this worked fine for the first couple of few months until we got to the real cold weather. And one morning when Hannah Lucas and her husband Ernst went down to put the dog food out for the dogs that were housed in this building in the very cold weather, they found that the water in the watering dishes was frozen solid, and among the dogs in there was a mother with a litter of puppies. Well, we can't let that go on very long, and bought a wood-burning cast iron stove, installed it in the corner of the room, put a chimney on it, and had a heated. We could fix it up so it would burn all night, prevent the water from freezing. Now that was the very, very beginning, 1958, 1959. Then as more and more unwanted but desirable adoptive candidate dogs came into the custody of the dog officer, the members who had, or the individuals who had been collecting these dogs, began to think it was getting to be more than a simple little, let's take care of a dog or two, and met to incorporate the organization into the Buddy Dog Humane Society. The incorporation provided two advantages. One was that we'd be authorized to solicit donations from the public for a charitable use, and second, we would be tax exempt in anything that we did, including real estate or purchase of material. So the incorporation, 1960, I think, the Articles of Incorporation established the Buddy Dog Humane Society as an organization to provide shelter, care, grooming for unwanted, good adoptive pet dogs, and to care for them in something that at that time was unprecedented in this part of the state, and would care for them as a no-kill shelter. Every other housing facility for unwanted dogs at that time had a time limit, regardless of the quality of the dog or the type of the dog. After a certain number of days, it had to be disposed of. Well, we escaped from the surrender law by becoming owners of all of these dogs as we adopted them, and had the no-kill policy, the first shelter in this part of the country that we know of that had no-kill as its policy from the very beginning, as it does today. None of the animals that come into our custody have a limit on how long they may stay. We will keep them until we find a good adoptive home and find a new lease on life, a new leash for them.
And we're showing a picture of Buddy, as I found out yesterday, Buddy 1,
right,
that belonged to Alfred Helper.
Right. Now, the name of the society came from this this pastel that is being illustrated. This is Buddy. This is the dog that belonged to Al Halper, one of the original very active founders. And as the dog's name was Buddy, and we didn't name the dog after the society, we named the society after the dog. In the Articles of Incorporation, we had to assume some name, and it was spontaneous very quickly. Well, why don't we name him after the dog? So we call him Buddy. So we are the Buddy Dog Humane Society.
And I'm showing a blank slide, essentially. We don't own a picture that we know of Alfred W. Helper, but we've talked to his wife, and she is giving us, she's 93 years young, and she is giving us all her papers on Buddy Dog, and also on Wayside Acres and Helper Homes, and we'll be able to help do a program about the builders of Sudbury someday. So here is a blank. So, but if you recognize Alfred Helper in any of these pictures you'll be seeing, please yell out.
If you do the special on the builders of Sudbury, you might make it singular and say the builder of Sudbury. But that's one of the interesting sidebars. We now found ourselves with people that had fallen into misfortune and could no longer keep their family pets coming to the attention of this group and saying, we've had a death in the family and we have to consolidate and can't keep our dog. Will you please find a good home for it? So the need became evident that we had to do something more than what we were doing in the 10 by 10 ex-post office building. So the organization, now incorporated, met, now being joined by people like Gertrude and Arthur Adams and others among the early founders, and decided that we were going to build a new shelter. We try to minimize the sidebars. Very interesting story about how we found the possibility of renting the back of a piece of land in North Sudbury that was in a quite isolated area. It was very, very close to Dakin Farm, long before any of the Dakin Farm houses were built, when Elroy Hawes had his dairy farm up there, so it was quite rural. We leased in a, again, a complete sidebar of the lease arrangement, some land on which we built a shelter. We didn't have architectural money at that time, so the shelter was designed by a drafting board on my dining room table, where I designed the shelter, and then we and Henry Greenblatt had now joined us, and Ernst Lucas and I did much of the actual construction work of building the building on Dakin Road, which was large enough to accommodate about 30 dogs in pens and cages. There were no big open runs for them at that time.
There's a cup of water.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Normally pollen season doesn't bother me. This year it decided to affect my, my speaking voice, but thank you. Now we are preparing to build this building, and it was a very, very interesting time to try to do this because we had not established any reputation with any suppliers, and we didn't have any bank account, we didn't have any money. The material we ordered for that building had to be COD. The suppliers wouldn't deliver it to us unless we paid cash for it as it was delivered. And there were the many times that Gertrude and Arthur and Hank Greenblatt and Ernst and Hannah would be called to come to the construction site to take care of the delivery of the fences or the concrete block, and reach into our purses and pockets and take out a checkbook to pay for those items. At that time, incidentally, this is a sidebar worth mentioning, one of the mason contractors in town Steve Grandy had his construction headquarters on Union Avenue and was a major mason contractor. Now, in many of the jobs that he did, they would order over the required material rather than run short while labor was on hand. And he authorized us to go to that lot and select whatever was available, and he donated it. All of the glazed tile in that building on Dakin Road was donated by Steve Grandy. Some of the concrete block was donated by Steve Grandy. The flatbed trailer that hauled it all up to North Sudbury was donated by Steve Grandy. So it was help of this sort that allowed us to build what at that time we thought was a marvelous shelter compared to a wooden 10 by 10 ex-post office building. Let's see, that was completed about 1964.
How did you make money? Did you start having, did you wash dogs or sell bakery goods, or how did you raise money?
We're not well enough organized to do the dog washes at that time. We did have bake sales, and got permission from some of the merchants in town for us to put our bake sale in the lobby of the building, in which they had a bakery inside the supermarket, but allowed us to compete with them, and donations by solicitation. We all had friends, neighbors, acquaintances that we would tap for another donation, and there were no real organized solicitation. We did, however, begin to recruit members, and with the membership came the opportunity to make donations of labor, material, or, we never objected to, cash. And there was no limit on the amount of cash we would accept. We were very, very liberal about our policy there.
And did you have dog shows, or was that separate?
No, the dog shows came later. Okay. We were very, very busy at this time trying to get the building established and our communication and getting our staff and the proper care of the animals. But the adoption went well. There are many, many anecdotes that we could tell about the incidents up there. We were there for 10 years. And if I may, I'll share just one of my favorites, perhaps two. I was alone one evening at the shelter and found that a new German Shepherd, male German Shepherd, had come in during the day while I wasn't there. And I saw the name on the placard on his little pen. It said Duke. And I said, well, that looks like a nice dog. And I had never seen him before. But I opened the gate and moved into the pen, and as I often do, getting a relationship with the dog, I just sat down in the other corner of his pen. Well, he looked at me out of the corner of his eye, and then I moved a little closer, a little closer, a little closer. So gradually, we were just barely touching, and he didn't recoil away, and I didn't try to do anything more than that to him. I said, okay, Duke, there's a good boy. And then I did that again the next night. I learned later that we had him there because he had been 4 times successfully charged with vicious biting in the town of Lexington, and his owners had been ordered to dispose of the dog. And the way they disposed of the dog was to lie to us and tell us he was a good dog and turned him over to us. Well, Duke wound up, he was a fine specimen. We backtracked enough to get the pedigree on him. And he was a marvelous line dog, worth maintaining the lines. Normally we say, let us not have any more puppies. The world already has millions more than needed. But in this case, where there was marvelous line characteristics for the breed, we kept Duke. And again, by this time, we were joined by another very early activist, Elfrieda Tyner, active with other animal welfare agencies in this part of the state. She's not with us today. She's not well, unfortunately. And Elfie knew the animal control officer for the City of Boston Police, the leader of their canine corps, and turned Duke over to Al Canupius of the Boston Police Department. Duke sired 2 generations of highest quality canine patrol dogs for the Boston Police Department. So there was Duke. Duke found a very, very happy future. And I didn't know that he was a 4-time biter when I was sitting next to him.
Well, let me tell my story. I got a dog in 1970 from Buddy Dog, and I was forewarned, don't even take him out and walk him around, because this dog has had 12 biting incidents, and he's going to be destroyed. There is no hope for this German Shepherd. And I looked at him and saw that he had a hip dysplasia. I took him out for a walk, realized that he had this problem, and I adopted him. And they said my vet said he would only last 6 years, and he died exactly 6 years to his birthday. Mm-hmm. But he had a very happy life, and he never attacked at anyone except my CPA, who deserved it.
That's very good.
No, it was a sheer accident. It could have happened anywhere, but no, he was an extremely intelligent dog, had a tremendous long line, and the thing was, his real name was Baron von Blitzkrieg. Which should be a warning if you name a dog that way. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a problem, but I had no problems, really. Yes. And Ellen has a story.
I can say I was one of those that got one of the first of Harry Rice's dogs, and I don't know how many people here knew Harry Rice. It was a fantastic place to go, but it happened that, and I hadn't even heard of Buddy Dog at the time, but I had a lovely border collie that are very loyal, and I left once, and I had a screen door, not the outside door. And of course, Whiskers went right through it looking for me and ended up in the dog pound. So the next day I went up to get him, and I hadn't even known about Buddy Dog, but there was this one building, and on the side was another 10 by 10 area wired in, and only about 8 or 10 dogs. There weren't that many dogs at the time. And I picked up my dog, and I was having a long talk with Harry Rice because he had horses there I was interested in. And he said, take that other dog. And I said, what? And there was this little puppy, probably about 4 or 5 months old, nipping at all the other dogs and biting at him. He said, they're going to kill him if you don't take him out of here. So I picked up that dog. It was a gorgeous dog. It was half Rhodesian Ridgeback and a half a boxer. And it was a beautiful dog, very bright. And at the time, I said, what do I owe you for this? Oh, whatever you want to give. It doesn't make any difference whether you know it or not. I think I had $4 that I paid for it, and so I'm there. Then when we got up to Dakin Road, my Whiskers was older then, and he kind of got Alzheimer's. So he used to wander off and not know where he was. And so Betsy Wallace picked him up once. And she called me, I picked up your dog and all. So I went up there and got to know her. From then on, whenever he walked through my house from Goodman's Hill onto Old Lancaster and whatnot. She'd pick him up and drive around the front of my house and ring the bell. Here's your dog again. And took care of me.
And then something happened, and these slides may not be exact order, Ed, but you suddenly are at the Copley Plaza. What happened that what I call society discovered you?
Now we're talking about 1964, 64, or 65. But let me do my other anecdote about this, because there was another dog incident there. I was there alone one night, and a family came in to see about adopting a dog, and the gentleman spoke with a very, very thick Irish brogue, and said they were looking for a dog for the family, and we looked back and forth, and there, in one of the cages there was a Keeshhound cross. Those of you that know Keeshhound coat is like a Brillo pad, you know, tight, gray, twisted hair. And he was only about 40 pounds. He wasn't a very large dog. And I said, well, here's one here you might be interested in. And he said, what kind of dog is that now? I said, well, I think it's pot Irish Wolfhound. Oh, you have to do some salesmanship in this, you know. So we took the dog out, and they put a leash on it and walked it around, and the family decided that an Irish Wolfhound was just the right thing for a family with Irish ancestry. And they took the dog away. And as I occasionally did at that time, I'd be flipping through the records of recent adoptions, and for some reason this dog was a favorite of mine. So I called after about 3 weeks, and as we sometimes did, to check on how the adoption was going. And the person answered the phone, and I said, I'm calling to see how you're making out with our dog that you got from Buddy Dog. And the phone blasted at me. Your dog? What do you mean, your dog? This is not your dog. This is our dog. This is our family dog. We'll never let this dog go. This is our dog. And I said, fine, that adoption is going along okay. We don't have to follow up more on that. But then about this time, in 65, one of our newer members that's only been with us for about 40 years showed up at the shelter, having been introduced to the fact that Buddy Dog was doing some work, and came to visit at the shelter at the time that the then treasurer, Henry Greenblatt, unfortunately now deceased, was at the shelter, and Ann Sargent met Hank Greenblatt at the shelter. Henry described what we were doing, and Ann and Hank went to lunch together, and Ann began to think that this might be an organization that was doing good but needed some help. She didn't quite say that, but the help did began to occur. Up to this time, all of our fundraising, all of our activity had been quite local. We were a mom-and-pop organization within the town of Sudbury. Bake sales at the local supermarket was one of our largest fundraisers. The rest was donations extorted, extracted, persuaded from neighbors and friends. When Ann came aboard, she suggested after a short time and getting familiar with us as individuals and with the society that there might be ways to do something more with fundraising. And as Lee has put it, when did society find us? Well, Anne was very, very familiar with the activities in the city of Boston, having been at that time and for many years the special events arranger and coordinator for the Copley Plaza Hotel in Boston. And Anne began to suggest more productive ways of fundraising. Again, without going to the details, unless Anne wants to add some of the details, we then got into things like a formal dinner dance at the Sheraton. We then got into things like having a luncheon with a guest speaker like Polly Bergen, or a guest speaker like Mrs. Bush when she was wife of the Vice President of the United States, Bush I, Vice President. And as guest speaker to a luncheon affair, we had fashion shows, luncheons, affairs, all arranged by someone who was very skilled and knowledgeable, knew all the buttons to push and the people to contact to make it a successful event. Now we began to raise money in numbers that were a little bit more than just paying the weekly payroll. There were many times at that time that weekly payroll was made by the members of the society because we didn't have a bank account. Now we began to accumulate a little bit with this introduction to the higher level of fundraising opportunities that we got with Anne and Elfie Tyner and some others from the Mary Louise Henderson and others assisting us to get into the Circle of Boston activities. Having now accumulated a little bit of working capital and having been so successful that we were having trouble operating where we were on Dakin Road. Complete sidebar story on this that we won't go into. The traffic coming to our little shelter on Dakin Road, very narrow, twisty road, was beginning to irritate the neighbors with justification. There were times the cars trying to get into the Buddy Dog Humane Society were backed up out of our driveway and were on the side of the road, which then led the Zoning Board of Appeals that had to renew our permit annually because we were in a residential district, putting more and more limitations on. You may not be open until a certain hour. You cannot open on Saturday before noon. You cannot open on Sundays. And we were becoming so constrained that we couldn't perform our function. Now we were challenged to find a new site and build a new building. Now I'm afraid I'm coming into contemporary rather than history, Lee.
No,
we were looking
to show the location and the future home of Buddy Dog Humane Society with a big white dog sitting there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Interesting sidebar on that site, that the piece of land that is in the background of this picture of the groundbreaking for the building the new site was owned by then Boston Edison, now Enstar, and Boston Edison had received Department of Public Utilities approval to build the overhead high tension lines that you will see behind the Buddy Dog shelter on Post Road. Those steel towers with the big cross arms were designed to march up Goodman Hill Road from the Boston Post Road, then down Goodman Hill Road, then up Concord Road to the Maynard-Concord line. Those of us, I was then active in town politics, selectman or something, felt that we did not want to have the skyline of Sudbury marked by a 200-foot wide defoliated strip with steel towers growing up in the middle of it. And Ellen, who lives on Goodman Hill Road.
And that was a fight.
Eh?
I remember the fight very well.
Remember it. We decided to try to object to this, and for 5 years fought the Department of Public Utilities the State Department of Public Utilities and Boston Edison to get them to put that power transmission line underground, which they finally did. That's a major story in itself of how it happened. There were 35 visits to the Boston Edison, no. Okay. We've challenged them enough to get them to put it underground. The reason I tell you this is because it was just several years later that I went to the headquarters of Boston Edison to ask them if they would cooperate with the Buddy Dog Humane Society and sell us a piece of land for our site. And as a selectman, I had signed the request for the special appropriation to allow us to hire an attorney for the Department of Public Utilities challenge of Boston Edison. My name was on many of the documents, and when I met with Jack Cox, the Vice President for Real Estate, as I began to describe to him the piece of land we would like to buy from Boston Edison, at one point he said, "Let's see, your name is familiar." "Why do I remember your name?" "Oh, I remember you." Well, we for 5 years had fought them, and I must say that they were more than gracious in his overlooking the fact that we indeed had given them a good time and forced them to do the right thing. We've never had any power failures of the underground high-tension lines. So we bought that site, and, oh dear.
Well, here's the picture with a big white dog.
Okay.
And does anyone recognize, other than Ed Kreitzik, the other three people? Is that Ann Sargent?
I think Ann Sargent was there.
Is that right, Ann?
No.
No, that's not you. Okay, thank you.
No, she line to the third left from Ed, much younger version of Ed. Jean gone, and then Herzog, who was very effective in our early years.
Right. Thank you.
I think one of the individuals is the contractor, John Kuhlman, the general contractor that built the building.
Now, what was the dog's name?
I'm almost sure that was Buffy.
That was Buffy?
Buffy, B-U-F-F.
Buffy. Well,
yeah, Buffy.
Well, Buffy is very, very good at digging, as you see.
Yeah.
There they are, putting the shovels in the
Right.
dirt,
Yeah.
and he's really getting into it.
Right.
And
Yep.
this is the result. It's a huge hole that he dug.
Yep.
And that's where
Yep.
that's why they had to put Buddy Dog right there. Showing
That was the first excavation. That was a site. Yes, that's where the foundation went.
So here they are, more excavating. And then here is a picture of you giving your vision of what it's going to look like with people standing there.
What, on the site?
On the site, with turned up dirt.
Okay. And there should be some illustrations of the building concept, the building under construction.
Under construction, here
Yep,
we are
yep,
with the walls starting to go up.
Yep.
And then we have the great, a lot of these pictures were taken by Vic Neumeyer. And very, as you'll see, very artistic, some of them. And this is showing the trailer with the derrick lifting up the roof supports. And then with
trusses, we had to.
and then I believe this is you with a contractor looking at the roof line within.
Yep.
And then an artistic picture of the roof beams, and another artistic picture by Vic showing someone hammering with in silhouette. And so the job was continued, and then another silhouette with contractors building the concrete wall.
What year is this?
1974.
1974, completed in 75. Construction 74, completed 1975.
And the interior of the very raw interior with the kennel holes along the right side. And then the finished structure without any landscaping. And then a side view showing the entire length of the building. Interesting to note that a recent program we did on the history of King Philip War and the history of the town seal, right behind here is the Goodnow Garrison site, which hopefully the planning board will be protecting and the Historic Commission. And then opening day, September 25th, 1976, a lot of reporters, as you'll hear. But you were being interviewed with a...
We went into this project at one of the meetings of the board of directors. Someone asked, what is our strategy for financing and supporting a project of this sort? And the answer was that our objectives are so fine that the Lord will provide. Truly, we had no idea how we were going to finance this. We made an application for mortgage to 3 different banks. We got accepted by all 3, and then ran a little auction between them to get a half point better on the interest rate. And we had to get a large mortgage. Over 2/3 of the cost of building this was mortgaged, not knowing where it was all going to come from. And here I must touch on another sidebar, a very, very important one, because a great deal of that mortgage was retired by a very prudent, very wise, and very generous donation by an individual who, at the end of each year of his financial activity, would determine a donation to be made to the Buddy Dog Humane Society, limiting the condition for the purpose of retiring mortgage cannot be used for operational. If you're going to operate, you must pay your own way. But for retiring mortgage, here is a generous donation, and that generous donation might be $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. And so for Ernest Henderson and for Mary Louise Henderson, we are eternally grateful for the ceremony that we had at Ann Sargent's house 5 years before the term of the mortgage was to expire, in which we had in Ann's fireplace the ceremony of burning the mortgage. That was a great day.
And you'll see that picture in a moment. Here we are in a color photo of the Buddy Dog as it opened, and then 3 ladies holding 2 dogs, opening day. Any recognition of anyone here? No? Okay. Yes? Yes?
Reading from left to right. Elfie Tyner, whom Ed mentioned
Thank you.
earlier, and Ann Herzog.
Ann Herzog.
Still a great day for all of us.
That's 2 people. Who's the third one?
What?
Who's the third one?
I'm the first. Elfie Tyner is the second, and Ann Herzog is the third.
Okay.
And
Thank
I get the names of the dogs.
you. You are in the picture. You are in the picture. And
What is your name?
I am Ann Sargent.
and Sergeant. And here we are.
We introduced Ann Sargent earlier as the one that walked across the muddy planks to come in to meet Hank Greenblatt, and then introduced us to the wider world of those who are interested in helping an organization like this.
And here we are with a picture with you being congratulated in front of the Buddy Dog, and there is a total of 7 men, including yourself. I don't know who they are, but they're congratulating you. And there's a man in dark glasses looking very smug behind. And then we have more opening festivities with a man from a television station in a suit that could only have been worn in 1976. Plaid was in. I bet you don't remember that. Plaid was in. Everyone is wearing plaid practically, except Ed. Ed was wearing a black, apparently black pants. But you're looking at the pens outside, and then we have an interior picture of the hullabaloo of opening day inside, and Ann Sargent listening to Ed explain where the money went. But Ellen Crone, and I don't know what you're doing, if that was, it didn't say what you were doing, if that was opening day or later, or Ellen?
I'm not sure. Opening day was when I live up the top of Goodman's Hill.
Right.
I walked down to go in and see if I could help, and I met Ed, and we were talking. He said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm an accountant."
Oh.
He said, "Oh." He said, "We're paying a man from Wayland a salary, and he charges us mileage." and he charges us mileage to come over here. So I started in there for 17 years. I went in every week and did the payroll and the cash receipts.
Did you charge for walking?
No,
Okay,
No.
good, good.
no,
You got the
they
right
got me
one.
free.
And then we have the story of, this is the model, it turns out, for the statue that's in front. And as it says, this model had a plaque put on it, and it was given to Mrs. Lighton H. Noyes, with sincere appreciation by the Buddy Dog Humane Society, October 1975. Ed has not made connections with Mrs. Noyes for a long time, and this turns out to be the original model, and they have if anyone knows where this model is, it'd be greatly appreciated, because they'd like to, Buddy Dog, I've been told, would like to make more copies of this to be given as awards, but they don't own this. They gave this away.
But now, having had the plaque read to us, Lee, we have the beginning of a track down to see if we can find it.
Yes. And that
The sidebar is worth commenting on, both the statue itself and the model. The model was made by a sculptor who did the sculpting of the large granite statue in front of the Buddy Dog building, which is a dog being embraced by a boy and sitting on a four-foot cubed granite block. This was John Weidman, the sculptor, who at that time did not have the money to buy the material to do such a sculpting. Ann Herzog introduced us to John Weidman. We paid for the block of granite. He did all of the work. We got volunteer donation from Union Carbide, our then next-door neighbor, of all of the acetylene and oxygen that was used in the process that Weidman uses for his sculpting. High pressure flame from acetylene torches to cause the granite to flake off. Carved that statue that you see in front of Buddy Dog. Quite recently, Ann Sargent was trying to track John Weidman and found that this, one of the earliest, if not the earliest, large carving with this technique by John Weidman, is now something. Can you tell us more, Ann, about what you found about John Weidman's reputation worldwide today?
About John Wyman. The last I heard was that he was living in Russia. That's a little hard to track down. There's a very nice statue in Townsend of a fireman holding a child. John has done exquisite work all over the world. Very pricey. We were so lucky to have him do this for us.
But the story that Ed told me, thank you, Ann, was that when this statue came down from New Hampshire, where it was made in a field, it had lots of stone and ice and underneath it. And Ed, as an engineer, did something that he would never do if he was thinking about it. He put his hand underneath this statue to clear off the stones and the ice as you see it suspended. Ed, do you want to continue the story?
I have a very, very simple rule that I made many years ago while working in the Air Force, in the Army. Never put any part of your body under a suspended load. Think, a car on a jack, a front-end loader with a hydraulic lift. Never put any part of your body under a suspended load. As Lee points out, I violated it then because we had to get the rough material out from the frozen material from out from under the statue before we could put it on the pedestal. And we did indeed get it cleared off, and it obviously is level because it's been there for 30 years now. The other sidebar that I think I'd like to comment on about this is the model. One of the largest donation that we had received up to that time came from Ms. Lighton Noyes, with a note saying that her son had decided to dedicate his life to be working with animal welfare in some manner when he finished his college and his training. Meantime, he had been sent to Vietnam, where he was killed. And she said, I think of no better way to make use of the $10,000 insurance that the government paid at his death than to donate it to the Buddy Dog Humane Society to continue the work that he thought he was going to do. That was our largest donation up to that time, that $10,000. So there are so many sidebars on this. We'll never get it all finished, but that one is worth mentioning, that our first major donation. Then we gave them a copy, our only copy. We gave to his mother in recognition of the generous gift and the acceptance of what her son had been aspiring to do. So,
and we have a picture of it covered up, obviously, for a grand opening. It's all covered and wrapped up, or was it to keep it warm? I don't know which.
No. We're going to have an unveiling.
And I don't have pictures of the unveiling, but there it is, in the beautiful garden in front. And then we're back to Polly Bergen at the Sheraton Copley Plaza, or when she was appearing.
This was one of the luncheon with guest speaker that Ann Sargent and some of her associates, Polly Davidson and Elfie Tyner, would help arrange as fundraisers. Now the fundraisers were getting us, perhaps 500 times more than we could get at our best bake sale in Sudbury. And we were beginning to accumulate enough to begin to pay down our mortgage.
And here you are burning the mortgage party in 1983.
Yep.
With Mrs. Henderson in the middle.
Good. Is Mrs. Henderson there? She certainly deserves a place, because it was Ernest and Mary Louise that made the biggest donations for, quote, retiring the mortgage.
And Ernest is standing beside her.
Good.
Any other recognized people at the mortgage burning?
Ed at the end.
Ed is on the right.
Yeah, right, and then two Hendersons.
And then this is Mrs. Bush, the president's mother. In I believe it was 1983 or 1984, at a function to raise money.
Right. And she at that time was talking about two things. One was her sponsorship of literacy program. Literacy was something very important to her, and she had written a book about Millie, her dog, and how what a White House looks like from a dog's view. And a very, very interesting book. The book of Millie is still available. And this is a lady who is the wife of a vice president, the wife of a president, and the mother of a president. Pretty good.
And you also had Cleveland Armory,
Cleveland
1991.
Amory, the proper Bostonians, the author, and a very, very active animal welfare individual. I'll give you another little sidebar about Barbara Bush and her sense of humor. I was the president of the Buddy Dog Humane Society. She was the wife of the vice president. And after her very, very informative and well-received talk, some of the ladies and people who were attending the luncheon were asking for autographed copies of the book on Millie. And as they were gathering about, I assisted in taking the book and putting it on her table so she could sign it. And with a droll sense of humor, she said to me, well, these ladies are really having a big day today. It isn't often that they spend time with both the wife of the vice president and the president. And she pointed to me, the president of the Buddy Dog Humane Society, which was quite an elevation, believe me. Now we are in the current shelter with our initially 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in this part of the state would not put down nor surrender dogs, 13 dog officers in that were candidates for being good adoptive pets. Instead, they would come to Buddy Dog. As far away as Middleborough and as far away as a town in Connecticut, whose name I've forgotten, they would come to the Buddy Dog Humane Society to turn the dogs over to us. We would adopt them as the Buddy Dog, as the dog officer, animal control officer brought them to us. And I think it is worth mentioning that at this time, the Buddy Dog Humane Society was also doing some politicking and had some influence, not all by ourselves, but some influence with the help of a very, very well-versed political activist, one of our present members of the board of directors, Virginia Fuller. We had some influence on getting this pound surrender law abandoned. That law no longer exists, that dogs must be turned over. We now have a law in Massachusetts that says that any animal being placed for adoption from any shelter, not just the Buddy Dog Humane Society shelter, must be spayed or neutered, or under control to be sure that it is spayed or neutered as soon as it comes of age, before it may be placed for adoption. These two steps have made a tremendous difference in the amount of unwanted dogs. The littering is much less occurring right now because of the spay-neuter law and the closing of the pound surrender law.
And here we have a picture of Ann Sargent in 1994 at the Dog Days of Summer fashion show at the Boston Design Center.
Ah, yes. That was another one that brought us very, very good donation received for something of this sort, with members eager and willing to subscribe and to sell seats for a luncheon of that sort.
And we have three women with two greyhounds standing out front of Buddy Dog.
Their names I can't give you, but they were representatives of the Greyhound Rescue Society that would find good, healthy dogs that were perfect except for one thing. On the racetrack, on the greyhound racing, they didn't win often enough. And they were to be put down because of that. The only thing wrong, and some of these are very young dogs, under 2 years old. And there was a Greyhound Rescue Association that would from time to time bring us some of their best greyhounds, which we would place. We couldn't take all of them, or we would have the whole shelter filled with greyhounds. But the Greyhound Rescue used Buddy Dog Humane Society, as does some of the other rescues. The Labrador Retriever Rescue frequently uses Buddy Dog.
And that reminds me of a story. When we had the country store, a 1931 Lincoln limousine pulled up out front, and a couple came in, and we got in conversation with them and asked them, you know, what they did, that they had a limousine, and they said it's for our dog. Lady was a greyhound, a beautiful white greyhound, and had won more races as of 1964 than any other greyhound ever did. She bought the car, she bought everything, she owned everything. So some people do give back.
Well, they were giving back well, but what we would like to give back is the effort largely led by Virginia Fuller, one of our directors, having gotten a referendum on the election in the state of Massachusetts to eliminate greyhound racing as a sport in the state. There are thousands of young dogs that are killed every year that have nothing wrong with them except they don't win often enough. When a litter is born for greyhound, there's a quick sorting out of those that may be good candidates. And those that are not good candidates for racing are disposed of. Then there are some that are trained, and those who do not come through the training well enough are disposed of. It's a pretty gruesome and unhappy thing. And as they are racing, they are exposed to injury, it's a sad life. That's a sidebar. We won't go into that right now. We're talking about the history of Buddy Dog Humane
And
Society.
here we have a young lady, a brunette, holding 3 puppies. I don't know who she is.
I'm quite sure that's Susie Freeman.
Susie Freeman, okay.
At that time, one of the staff of the Buddy Dog Humane Society.
And then 3 other women with a dog that isn't a greyhound out front on opening day. And then we have Paula Adelson, who was the assistant dog officer here for many years, and Dr. Adelson's wife, and Bonnie Di Ottavio. I don't know if she's... we couldn't possibly show pictures of all the people that have helped Buddy Dog through the years. That's a show, a program all by itself, but hundreds of people have been volunteering there for years. And then we have Mr. Sanderson in the middle, and with what I call Woofy. I don't know his name, but he's a big one. And then we have the front of Buddy Dog. It was beautifully with flowers, and the front as it was. And that's the end of the show. Thank you very much.
May I help put the end on it, if we will. First, I'd like to ask Ann Sargent, who, as I say, is a newcomer, having been with us only 40 years, or more, a little more than that. Is there any highlight that you think we've missed, Ann? Hello?
I think you did a great job, Ed.
Well,
You have been doing a great job for, how long is it now? 50 years. And I hope that everybody present has learned something about us that you didn't know, and that you'll write a check.
exactly. I felt we did have to have that type of conclusion, of course.
And there is
Now,
brochures.
We are, yes, thank you. We are finding that our present building, 25 years old, has served us well. 25, more than that, 20, 26, 27, has served us very well, but it is very, very hard used. And a building that must be hosed down with disinfectant every day, and sometimes several times a day, and has animals as the occupants, gets hard used. We are considering the need for establishing a better facility. What the details are and when it will happen, we are not sure, but when we're ready to publicize it, we would like to think that we would have enthusiastic support for many people here for setting Buddy Dog forward on a complete new generation. We have brought some of our quarterly periodical, the magazine Wagging Tails, and brochures. They're on the table out back, so if those of you would like to know more, take a brochure, take a copy of the Wagging Tails, and do something with the envelope that is attached to each of them. Well, so we thank you very much, and I must apologize for not being able to do all of the identification of some of the parties here. I have a vision problem, and I've been getting cues from Lee, which helped, but I did not see all of what was being presented. Is there any question anyone would like to place about to us? Then I would thank you very, very much for your time and attention.